Hello again, everyone. I'm still David Heiner, and this is Just for Farmers. With me, as always, is Lord Harris of the Poor. Paul,
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody.
still staying there. I've got to get my chat up lines. I've got to work on those. With us today is returning expert from the first series because you seemed to like it when it was a little bit edgy, a little bit controversial, a little bit contrary. But actually, it shouldn't be labelled as that because it's true. And we've welcomed back today our friend Jules Morgan from KPM Marine, who is a design engineer by trade, world powerboat racing champion formerly, a world record holder, but actually his obsession, and having known Jules for many years now, when he has an obsession, he drills very, very deep on that obsession, is around sustainability and driving productivity in our country. So, Jules, welcome back. How are you?
Hi, yeah, all good. We've just finished a major show down in Southampton for marine and renewable, so we've done very well there. Just goes to show that if we put our mind to it in this country and we innovate, we can compete with anybody in the world. But you got to work
Can't we
at it.
just?
Yeah,
We,
yeah, we
and
really
that's
have a
it.
pool of talent.
And before we get into our subject today, I think that is really important for us to stress. In the scheme of history, it wasn't that long ago that our country was at the forefront of innovation, creativity, and we still have that. We
We do.
still have it. We just need to be allowed to develop it, I think. But
And I think when we talk about sustainability today and what that means for the agricultural sector, innovation is absolutely at the heart
yeah,
of that, isn't it?
Yeah, last podcast, we discussed sometimes the old ways are the best ways of doing things, and
yeah,
how we have this situation with political, activist, academic, and corporate expediency, where they're chasing the new shiny things, yeah, and new ways of doing things, when in fact we need to look at the old ways of doing things, yeah. And a lot of this is they try to use it as data generated in AI, yeah,
yeah.
and we'll move on to um, how relevant that is to policy making. Okay. And I'm
Okay.
going to give you a really, really good example. Um, so if we start off on data AI and the difference between that and information. Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
All
give
right.
you a real life example. These are 101 things, but what they will do is that they will teach you what questions to ask. And it will also show that sometimes the research and the decisions from the research are not necessarily correct. So um,
Just,
I have a coin in my
just
hand.
before you go any further, Jules, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Just for those listening, in case we're not sure, what do you mean by 101 things?
101 is the first class that you would go to at university or at school. So it's class 101.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's kind
top
of
of the
like
class,
great.
you mean?
No, bottom of the class.
Ah, there we go. Right. Okay.
It's your first lesson when you're at university. It's
Right. Got you.
101.
Gotcha. Just thought we wanted to
Yeah.
get that clear for people.
Um, or the first day at school.
Got you.
It's that. Okay. I have a coin in my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a vernier. And this measures to fractions of a thousandth of an inch. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm going to take some dimensions and I want you to write down the numbers I give you. Okay.
Yeah.
For those driving and listening, don't try and do that.
Yeah. 27.3.
David and I are busy writing. Yeah.
I'm going to rotate it around a bit randomly. 27.3. I'm going to rotate it again. 27.3. Rotate it around again randomly. So I'm taking random positions on
Yeah.
measuring the diameter. 27.3. Rotated it around again. 27.3.
Theme emerging.
These are the diameters.
Right.
Rotated it around again. 27.3. Okay, so look at the data. What does it tell you?
The diameter of that gun is 27.3.
It is
What shape is
consistent.
What shape is it?
Circle.
So it's 27. Wherever you measure it, it's 27.3. What
Yeah.
shape have I just measured?
Circle.
A cylinder.
You would have thought, wouldn't you?
Because it has depth.
So Jules is holding up a 50p piece for those that are is that an octagon?
I have no idea. It's a 50p piece.
8-sided.
Seven-sided.
Seven-sided.
But I measured that randomly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rotating round. Wherever you measure that 50p piece, it gives you 27.3.
Because the bit that's sticking up is
geometry.
opposite a flat side. Right.
The geometry.
Yeah.
That's your data.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you interpret that data. It's a circle.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There is a big distinction between data and information. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, to get the true meaning of this 50p, yeah, you can put it on an optical comparator. You can roll it about the center. Yeah. There's a number of different ways that you've got to look at this to tell you that it's not round. So if you work purely on the data and you don't do the comparative measurements, the other measurements, you're not taking information about this shape. Yeah. You're working with data, you're not working with information. You need both sides.
And I can hear farmers in their tractors right now going, I know where he's going with this because this is absolutely bang on.
So I went through all of the stuff that the farmers have to fill in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's data driven. But the real world doesn't work that way. And we're trying to force decision and policy down via data, when in fact, what you need is information. Now, the farmer will go into the field. They might have data on certain aspects. Yeah. But information are all those things that you can't measure. You don't have sensors for. Yeah. So a lot of our policy, when everybody's talking about AI and data, yeah, if you're not careful, it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So the thing is that we are making policy and we are playing around with our food production on data that isn't necessarily accurate or correct. So, so you have a farm in East Anglia, yeah, and you're measuring certain things and soil and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a farm in Devon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now the data might look the same, but the information from all the other things that you're dealing with and you see on a day-to-day basis and you naturally factor in on your decision making when you're farming, yeah, those will be different.
So what we're saying here, I think if I'm reading you correctly, Jules, is that on a farm in let's say Lincolnshire, where the soil might be data-wise quite similar to the soil down in Devon, so the actual numbers, the amount of nitrogen, carbon, etc., in the soils could be similar, but the crops can look very different when they pop out of the soil. Yeah. But the data says they should be the same. And what you're saying, there's other information that we're not perhaps measuring that is saying why there is that difference. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm pretty much saying that. Yeah.
Right.
So trying to have and the thing is that you're running data on climate and a whole load of other things, and the world is a lot more complex than that. Yeah. And what we're not doing is we are not using the farmers who know the land, know the cause and effect of various seasons and different weather. Yeah. We're trying to make everything data driven. And this is a big, big mistake. We are taking data. Oh, we'll put it through AI, which is basically rules-based decision making, expecting an answer. And it's actually not rendering anything close to what we expect it to, because we're not including information. And information comes in different forms. It comes in the form of you walk across the grass, or you open your eyes, or you monitor trends. And so we try and scientifically drive what the farmers should be doing in the policy. And I would maintain every single time that it is everything is a lot more nuanced than just data. And this
Again,
is the
I
mistake
can
that
hear the
we're making.
tractors. I can hear cheering, Dave. Can you hear cheering somewhere? I can hear cheering in tractors right now. Yeah, people going, absolutely. We've been trying to tell policymakers this for ages, that just telling us this is how we're going to reduce carbon, this is how we're going to reduce methane in the air, is just massive oversimplification from the reality.
But how do I overcome this, Jules? Because for every farmer and a tractor listening to this that's cheering now, we've got a civil servant in Whitehall whose job depends upon data and number crunching for his superiors.
Yeah, and it's the academics. Oh gosh, data, and AI. And we're going to do, and it's what I call grift. We are in what I would class as the grift economy. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Let me explain. Hustlers.
Yeah.
Hustlers.
Grifters. Yeah.
Yeah. Card sharks. Let me explain. And this is controversial, but 10 years ago, everybody was discussing big data. You have all this data, and what you can do is you can predict the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon of big data. Yeah. So you had large corporations and primarily tech and software companies basically saying, oh, well, we can supply you with big data. All the consultancies, we can supply you with big data. You can make predictive decisions from this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that didn't work. It didn't work. But everybody jumped on the bandwagon. So researchers, academics, corporations were basically big data washing. Yeah, we're using this. Yeah. And I challenge you to come up with a situation where big data makes an impact on your daily life, and the likelihood is it doesn't. So we went big data. We're now with AI. And as you know, I studied AI in 1985. Yeah, I told you the story about when I went to MIT URI to study intelligent robotics.
Yeah.
And AI. Yeah, we called them neural networks back then. And my dad, who was a carpenter, said, "I'm ever so proud of you, but when you can hang a door on a building site with a robot, I will buy 2 of them, and then I can just sit back." That was 1985. That's 40 years ago. We can't even do it in a laboratory. Yeah. So basically, what's happening is that we are being forced down this avenue for things that won't necessarily deliver. And I discussed how everybody oversells the technology. Yeah.
And I think, Jules, you were saying that you were linking in with what you're saying now. I think you went to, was it the Food Summit or something at Downing Street? There was a recent one. I know.
Oh, the Cabinet Office. Yeah. Yeah.
And what reaction did you get when you started to say some of these things, that maybe the data isn't the answer?
I also did one for a regional board. It's kind of a business quango. Uh-huh. And silence.
Is that
but if you saw the messages that people were sending me saying, "Oh, this is fantastic, this is great," yeah,
but they haven't got the courage to speak up with you.
Well, I think the problem is that a lot of people don't forget, I've been doing this since 1989 when I did my MBA thesis in future energy trends and product development. Yeah, and I followed it ever since. So I was looking into this before the hockey stick, Michael Mann's hockey stick, had even been invented. Yeah. And wow. when this proxy data came out from tree rings, I was going, what the hell's this? Yeah. How does this stand up? And the final line of my executive summary, and I hasten to add, my thesis you cannot get in the university library. The company that I did it for, the multinational, it was pulled. It was that. Yeah.
Too controversial.
So are you perceived as a heretic?
I am a complete heretic and contrarian. Yeah. But I'm an engineer. I work on the rules of force equals mass times acceleration. Gravity is 9.1812 meters per second. Pi is 3.142, blah blah blah, recurring. These are constants. And when I see data being misused or decisions being made, yeah. If we were using the policies and the methodology, yeah, that the scientists are using now, okay, as an engineer, planes would be falling out of the sky, bridges would be falling down, cars would be skidding off the road because boats would be sinking. Yeah, because you can't push the rules. You have to work on this evolution, yeah, of information and knowing what works and what doesn't work, and to a certain degree, predictability.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is one of the problems that we've got. We're trying to get too clever, too data driven, rather than using the massed knowledge of individual people that are there on the ground, know the soil, know how things are going to behave, know what their cattle's bringing to the to the earth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is
sorry, go on, please, Jules. I was just going to ask you, so therefore, how does this lead into the current debates around food production and whether or not we should all be drinking oat milk rather than cow's milk and all those sorts of phrases? How does this concern you have of basing all your decisions on data feed into food production?
Okay, right. I'm going to do a bit of maths here. Yeah, simple maths. The formula is indicative. It's not exact. It's not an algorithm. Okay, so what we have is we are discussing sustainability.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So sustainability equals something. That's around the wrong way, isn't it?
No, that's right. That was bang on. S equals.
Oh,
yeah. So again,
right.
we'll talk out what you're doing so that the people just listening can know what
so
you're doing.
For food production to be sustainable, you need to know, what do you need? You need water. Yeah. Need water.
Yeah.
You need a certain temperature range. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now that temperature range would be called delta T. Okay. For the water, it would be delta water.
Yeah.
Okay. So for food production, if you want to grow corn, whatever, yeah, you need water and you need the right growing temperatures.
Yeah.
Right climate. And then, yeah, you need the nutrients. Okay.
And the human or mechanical capability and capacity to create it.
We'll come to that. Yeah.
Right.
Do we need light?
Yes. Delta
so these
L.
are variables you're talking about at the moment in your
yeah. And then you need land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So you need so it will be the land used over the land available.
And again, we're making assumptions that is fertile land because there's a lot of talk about the topsoil in the next 20 years, etc.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. There's one thing missing from this equation. Okay.
So again,
so we've got the land, delta water.
Yeah.
Delta temperature.
Yeah.
Delta nutrients.
Yeah.
Delta light.
Yeah.
We need that to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't scientifically accurate. This is basic probability theory. There's one thing missing. R.
Which stands for?
Resilience.
Right. Resilience. Okay.
Resilience. Okay. So I'm going to run through. So
Resilience of what?
exactly, we're going to discuss that.
Okay.
So if you want something to be sustainable, it has to be resilient.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's obvious.
Yeah.
To carry on going, it's got to be resilient. Yeah. Can't fade or disappear or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But you also need those conditions of the land available and the probability for the land to be able to, yeah, having a sensible water supply.
Amount of water. Yeah.
You need the temperature to be within certain aspects.
Parameters. Yeah.
And nutrients
Mm-hmm.
and light.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for those listening to this, do go and watch the video at a later date. Jules has actually typed out a very pretty looking formula for us.
Okay. Yeah, but this is right. So, Dave, I'm going to give you some. Have you got a calculator with you?
As if by magic, the shopkeeper appeared. Yes.
Oh, fabulous. Right. So
It's not a scientific one.
Right. Okay. So we'll say land available is 0.5. Water is probability of 0.95. Let's be kind here. Temperature is 0.95 times nutrients. Let's say 0. Let's say 0. See what comes out. And delta L for light is 0.95. Okay. So what I need you to do is multiply 0.5
Yeah.
by 0.95
Yeah.
by 0.95
Yeah.
by 0
Yeah.
by 0.95.
That equals 0.
Exactly. Right. Now multiply it by the resilience, and let's be kind. Let's say it's resilient to 0.95 probability. Multiply 0 by 0.95. What have you got?
Still 0. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your sustainability line?
Not
0.
0.
0.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So let's do another. Yeah. So if we were going over to a certain type of crop, yeah, and we didn't have all of those conditions because we were playing around with them. So let's say we dropped the nutrients. Yeah. Let's say the temperature goes colder. Yeah. Let's say there is water, but sometimes it's frozen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And light. Yeah. We don't get as much sunlight as we like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the nutrients. So we don't put fertilizer on the ground. So the nutrients drop off. So if you start playing around with any single one of those things on a probability basis, it has a knock-on effect, and you will affect the production of food.
So what we're hearing,
that's how fragile the system is. But nobody looks at resilience. Okay, so let's look at and I'm going to direct this towards cattle. Okay. So over the last month, we've had month and a half, we have had lots and lots of rain. Okay. So it rains and rains and rains and rains, and you could say, well, that's climate change, and the Earth's getting hotter, so you've got more atmospheric water, which dumps more rain. Yeah. Now, if you knew that you were going to get more rain on a consistent basis, what crops would you be growing?
Those that are more sustainable and don't need and can react to the flooding, or probably growing rice in paddy fields or something.
Or yeah, but that's your plant. You could call it hardiness or resilience.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to reduce the amount of land used for food production. We're trying to take away any form of fertilizer. Yeah. And use less water. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because apparently, cow poo is causing water courses to be damaged. So say it rains and rains and rains and rains. Yeah. So arable crops and anything that you grow will suffer. So it's resilience on the basis that any of those things change or that we're trying to force change through policy, our sustainability goes down. Because sustainability is all those factors plus the resilience. Okay.
Yep.
Now, let's say that we had lots and lots of rain and really swinging, difficult atmospheric conditions and weather.
That's pretty accurate, I'd say, for now, where we are.
Yeah. The land use is not always right. We don't have, you can only plant on certain types of land, because of ploughing and harvesting, and we've got a lot of hills, we got a lot of land that we can't use. Now, the thing is that what I see growing everywhere under virtually most circumstances is grass.
Grass, yeah.
Yeah. What consumes grass?
Livestock.
Yeah.
Livestock. Okay. So when you boil it down, sheep on mountains in Wales, cows eat grass. How much fertilizer do you throw on grass?
Probably less than you have to put onto certain crops.
Yeah, well, we have a water meadow just outside our village, and I don't see them putting fertilizer on it.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean,
grass doesn't need
masses of help.
No, exactly. So it's resilient.
Yeah.
And then we have So you change all those numbers, and if you had grass which was very resilient, and we know it is, you still have a method of producing protein. The only thing is it's animals. Yeah. So let's think about places in the world where resilience is pushed to the limits. Yeah.
You're talking deserts and
very dry areas or very wet areas, I assume.
Yeah.
Or the topography of the land isn't conducive.
It's marginal. It's not suitable. It's not within the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia or the Nile, where you get the silt come down from the Turkish mountain or the Ethiopian mountains or something, and it creates a very fertile plain. So you look at the Sami, Finland, northern Finland, Arctic people, deer. That's their whole existence. You look at the Bedouin, camels. You look at the Mongols, horses. You look at the Bedouins in the Negev desert, goats and sheep. So what all of these societies that are under very difficult environmental stress do is they use basically a conversion process, because goats and sheep and all of these other animals are very, very efficient in producing protein that we need to survive. Yeah. Okay. And that's where the resilience comes in. So
how does this affect the farmer listening to this?
The way it affects the farmer is that basically, if we eliminate those animals that are very good at converting basically useless non-crop plants into a protein or foodstuff that we can use, that is a resilient system. So if we get rid of cattle, here's one for you. The Irish potato famine, do you know why that happened?
Was it the British government stopped the export and import of food goods?
No,
Okay.
no. That's yeah. The Irish planted a very specific type of potato. It's very high yielding. But the thing is that it was also incredibly weak to blight.
Mm-hmm.
And the British or the English or whatever, and this may be controversial, but you can look it up, planted a different variety that wasn't subject to this particular disease.
Okay.
Yeah. And so basically what you've got to basically plant things that are going to be resilient. Now, if we get rid of livestock, yeah, we are opening ourselves up to a higher probability of us not being able to obtain the amount of protein that we need.
Now, hang on a second, Jules. Hang on a second. I can eat avocados. I can drink oat milk. I can do all that sort of stuff, and I
I
can just
know.
eat vegetables, and I'll be absolutely fine. We don't need livestock. We don't need livestock at all. Let's just all become vegan. So, what's your? I mean, obviously, I'm being a little facetious, but what do you? How do you respond to that when somebody would say, to you,
basically,
but we don't need livestock?
yeah, but basically, like most things in life, you need a mix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I say to people that, if you look at the way our teeth have developed, we have canines, we have incisors, and we have molars.
Mm-hmm.
Molars for crunching nuts. Yeah. Teeth for eating meat. Yeah. And so we basically, those teeth have developed, those three types of teeth have developed. Yeah. Because of the kind of foodstuffs that we eat. So we've evolved to eat these things. Now, the problem is with avocados, you've only got to see what's happened to chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chocolate prices. So we are looking at trying to replace traditional foodstuffs that are in fact efficient. If you took a hilly terrain that had heather and various grasses growing on it, yeah, are you going to grow avocados? No.
No.
Are you going to grow almonds? No. Are you going to grow oats to make your oat milk? No. So we have to look at the resource that we have around us, yeah, and look at the most efficient way of converting that into the kind of proteins and foodstuffs that we need to sustain ourselves.
Yeah, but the thing is, Jules, is that, and again, forgive me, I'm just playing the opposing view, maybe, that the problem is that when I'm drinking my oat milk or I'm eating my avocados, it's not putting methane into the air. It's not causing all this terrible global warming that we've got and all this terrible flooding and horrendous weather. So surely I'm better off drinking my oat milk and eating my avocados than I am these terrible cattle that are pooing everywhere and causing climate change.
Yeah, but the problem is that can you name an avocado orchard in Europe?
Good comeback.
So how does it get here?
So exactly. So from a farming perspective, where do we go with this, Jules? How do we move this debate and this very vociferous and at times maybe uneducated debate forwards? What's your view on how we move this forwards?
Well, first thing you've got to do is you've got to localize. Yeah, so you've got to reduce the carbon miles of your food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Buy local.
Buy local. Yeah, and I buy all of my meat from a local farmer. Most of our vegetables from a local farmer. Yeah, funny enough, actually, I bought some avocados at the market at the weekend, and I took them home, and my wife said, "What's this?" And I said, "It's an avocado." And she said, "No, it's not." I said, "Yes, it is, because it's really light green and smooth skin." And she said, no, it's not. That's what avocados look like. Looking at the ones that I bought from the supermarket, which was all darker, purpley and knobbly,
Mm.
and kind of shrunken. And I said to them, no, that's a fresh avocado. Yeah. The ones in the supermarket had been they get put into ripening sheds, as do bananas, although they now, on the boats that they transfer the bananas on, try to ripen them on the boats. Yeah, I know that because I'm a marine engineer. So
Yeah, but you see, Jules, I'm going to interrupt you again, and this is just to keep the conversation going. Really, is that you talk about buy local, buy from the local farm shop, buy from the local butcher. I can't afford that. I need cheap meat. I need cheap vegetables, and actually, if it's cheaper to import them from Spain, my apples and strawberries, than it is to go and buy them from the local farm shop. Sorry, I'm gonna buy them from the supermarket.
the thing is that I actually go and shop in the market, and I add up, and it is no more expensive. If in sometimes it's cheaper than going to the supermarket.
Ooh, but then you've got advertising and big corporates, and we need you to. I mean, the reason I'm asking these questions is these are some of the messages that farmers know are untrue.
It's corporate
Are being,
expediency.
yeah, but are being
Yeah.
peddled out to people through advertising and through major supermarkets that, we could buy our not avocados, we could buy our apples from a British orchard, but you know what? We'll make more money out of it as an organisation if we buy them from France and ship them over. And no one's talking about that as the carbon footprint, particularly.
No, they don't. When I went down to the cabinet office, I said at some point in time you are going to have to create what I call CAT. Yeah,
What's
a carbon added tax. Yeah, because
right.
let's face it. Most of the governments around the world are broke. Yeah,
Mhm.
so they're going to be looking for new ways of taxing things. And what could be more what's the word that you
Ethically correct?
virtuous
Yeah, ethically right?
virtuous
Virtuous.
virtuous
Yeah.
and charging a tax on how far the food travels, yeah, by
I'm
one of
hearing
the
this.
dirtiest methods of transportation known to man, which is ships.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sea air is not clean. I know. I do the filtration. It ain't clean. Yeah. And and when they have these container ships, they throw the cheapest bunkering fuel that they can get. They're in shipping. They're in business. Of course, they're going to do it. So sea air is actually some of the dirtiest. So Southampton will be dirtier than London.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I was at a marine conference, and this is a number of years ago, and they'd estimated that on the whole of the EU coastline, 500,000 people died by advanced respiratory disease, and they all lived on the coastline. So the further you went inland, started to disappear. And
That's
because the air
completely
is very, very.
counterintuitive, isn't it?
Wow.
Go down to the
okay.
seaside and get fresh air.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I always joke
Come to
about that.
Birmingham, where Dave and I are from. Fresh air in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So,
So the other thing that I also proposed is said, look, at some point in time, and I've just written a technical paper, very upfront, and I wouldn't say confrontational, but it is asking questions. So I have CAT, which is carbon added tax. So you charge a tax on the difference between the manufacture or the growing of the product in the UK and the CO2 difference from importing it from New Zealand, argument's sake.
yeah.
And then you've got frozen lamb. So you've got all the power required to freeze the lamb to be able to bring it over, not just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that if you're really environmentally switched on, that this is acceptable?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I can do the numbers for you on my computer.
This brings two things to mind. I mean, the possibility, therefore, that sustainability is actually not sustainable or possible, as you suggested. But more importantly, it reminds me of a phrase in learning and development, which is called "the map is not the territory." You say, we're becoming data driven and we should be seeking the correct information from the right sources. And that's a bit like, a map is data driven. it's scientifically created. But if the three of us, were to stand in a field and describe it, we'd have a different version of what the territory is. And and I think what I am hearing on behalf of farmers here is that it doesn't matter what they're being told, they have to run a business and grow stuff. And yet they're being made to do things in a certain way that, by the sounds of it, is not right or even sustainable.
Yeah.
Based on the formula that Jules gave earlier on. Because if you start taking nutrients out, the whole thing becomes zero. If there's no water, it becomes zero. If there's no land, it becomes zero. So it isn't resilient because you haven't got to take any one of those elements out.
And everybody bangs on about sustainability, but if it's not resilient, it's not sustainable because everything tends to zero. Yeah,
I'm going to ask you a question.
Basic stuff.
I'm going to ask you a question about something slightly tangential to sustainability in a second, but I'm just interested in your views on net zero. Then, net zero, good thing.
Mathematically impossible.
Explain, Jules, why you think net zero.
Right. First, I need to just rewind a bit, and I come back to the net zero.
Yeah.
Basically. So I was advising that they look at a carbon added tax, CAT, and the other one is RAT, a recycling added tax.
Wow.
For the packaging. So CAT and RAT.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Good call.
Yeah. Now I go to our local market in Warwick, and I looked at how much rubbish I had in the recycling. Yeah, and I would say that it dropped by 90%.
Yeah, I can imagine.
90%.
Most of what goes into our recycling bin, and I have to say, certainly in my metropolitan area, they're very good at recycling. We have a great big bin. It's all packaging. That's what goes into the recycling bin.
Yeah, and
sorry, Jules, just to add, our recycling bin now, which is a good thing because we're recycling it, is more full than our waste bin. We have a waste bin that's half the size of our recycling bin, and it's very rarely full. The recycling bin is normally overflowing. So your point about rats, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so you got recycling added tax. And at some point, if people, I would do these things anyway, all the green stuff, I'd do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Yeah?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do it until I know that we're going to get a soft landing. As I said in the last podcast, you cannot have a revolution. Yeah. Look at what happened in China, the Great Famine with Mao. Yeah. Oh, the sparrows are eating the corn for the proletariat. So what did they do? They went and killed all the sparrows. That's what they did. Didn't realize that it was the sparrows that were stopping the insects and the locusts and all the and consequently what happened was that they had their crops literally destroyed.
So it goes back to your whatever the formula is. If we start just looking at individual parts of that formula, is what I'm hearing from you, and start only addressing that one part, it knocks everything else out. So whether it's nitrogen in the soils or it's methane in the air, when we only look at one of those and we start trying to reduce them, the whole resilience gets knocked out.
Yes,
you correctly.
Yeah, but do you remember we were discussing what I would do, which I would ring fence the change at the pace of change in the farming industry. I would be holding back, and we also discussed hot houses. Yeah, to make grow those things that we ordinarily buy from Peru, or and we discussed how Holland, the peppers are from Holland, the tomatoes, a lot of the fruits, they come from hot houses. Now, if we took those variable conditions, and we gave them a stable environment, which is a hot house, you can drop the resilience of the plants, because you're controlling this whole environment. If you're growing outside, You can't do that.
A bit like the local fruit farms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which makes it more sustainable. Because if you know that any single one of these will not tend to zero, and in any combination, yeah. So even if you're down at point, you're controlling these aspects, the light, and you have a fixed land use, yeah, water, yeah, it's much more efficient, yeah. You can drop the resilience factor. Yeah, your plants can be less resilient because you're protecting them. They don't have to be so hardy. Yeah.
Wow.
And also you pump in what 2000 plus parts per million of CO2 into the hothouses. Yeah, which goes into the plants.
Mm-hmm.
So then you become more sustainable. So if you work all of this out on a topographic basis, yeah, it's pointing to a number of things. One, the distance that food has to travel,
Mm-hmm.
the storage of that food, the processing of that food, yeah, and the waste of the food because we're bringing things over from
A huge thing. Yeah.
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 So basically, it's pointing to hothouses, ring fencing the method of production with slow, gradual improvement. Yeah. Looking at the old ways that planting clover every other season or every 2 seasons. Yeah. Which puts the nitrogen back into the soil. And I do believe that sheep animals love grazing on that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I think we are seeing that, in terms of in all aspects of farming, whether it's livestock or arable, there is this almost circular return to how fields used to be, and recognizing that the soil can recover itself if we give it its chance, that nature can win. So is it really about us now returning back to working with nature rather than trying to determine nature?
Yeah. As I said last time, farmers do not have interest in destroying their own means of financial support. They're not going to do it. You'll always get maybe one or two, yeah. But a lot of what we are not doing is we are basically saying to the to society, you can still have everything that you want when you want it, yeah, at the price that you want it. And in terms of sustainability, that is not realistic. Yeah. And you can have as much as you like. It is not sustainable if you start pushing back on the farmers and making their method of production more and more expensive and reduced yields.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't do it.
So can I bring you back to net zero just to give you, because you
Yeah,
said it's
yeah,
mathematically impossible, just to show
yeah.
you, and I probably need to sort of
Well, I
test
knew
it.
that in 1998,
But what do you mean by it's not
1989.
it's mathematically impossible? Because we hear this all the time as farmers, that net zero, net zero, net zero.
Right. At this moment in time, we are generating 400 parts per million of CO2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Put it into context. If you had a room full of people in a conference room, the CO2 level will be roughly about 2,000 parts per million. Yeah. You breathe in as a person 400 parts per million of CO2. What do you breathe out in terms of CO2?
Don't know.
40,000 parts per million.
As humans.
As humans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Purge. Let's have a call.
So stop breathing. That's the answer. We'll hold our breath.
And that's why when you watch Apollo 13, they're panicking about the CO2 levels. Yeah. So what we do, yeah, is with our net zero, we are basically, point one, assuming that all fossil fuels are used for burning. They're not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if we wanted to, we discussed electric cars last time. If you had a particular make of car, yeah, that is basically petrol internal combustion engine, same model, just different transmission methods,
Mm-hmm.
hybrid and electric. Yeah. And I won't mention the name of the car company. Yeah, they do have all three of these. So if you look at the break even, yeah, what you have is you have basically, this is the cost, the CO2 cost here of the production of that vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the electric, yeah, I'll call it CO2 electric.
So Jules is
It's
drawing a
higher.
graph, and
It's
he's got a
higher.
line, and the electric car's CO2 is above the previous line. Yes, electric is more CO2. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's not
So
taking into account the environmental challenges around dealing with the lithium batteries.
Components.
Yeah.
that, yeah. And so what we do is when we're talking about net zero, we are talking about what the machine emits or what it saves. So solar panels, yeah, it generates clean electricity. Well, it doesn't, because you've actually had to make the solar panel from coal and silicon. And it's a really dirty process, and there's loads of water involved, and it requires a lot of energy. So what we're not doing is we are not taking into account the CO2 burden of making the piece of equipment. Yeah. Now, this particular car, if you had an ice, yeah, it breaks even at 48,000 kilometers. Yeah. If you had the electric car, it breaks even at about 200,000 kilometers. And the reason is, yeah, is because most of our energy is still coming from fossil fuels.
Okay.
Still coming from fossil fuels. So even if you went totally green with wind turbines, yeah, or my preference is nuclear, yeah, then the break-even cost of the CO2 starts to drop. Yeah. Now we have to try and replace all of the heat pumps, yeah, solar panels, wind turbines, all of these environmental pieces of equipment, they all have a CO2 break even point. Yeah. Heat pumps still require electricity. Solar panels don't.
Right.
Wind turbines generally don't. Okay. Electric cars do. And a lot of our energy is still coming from fossil fuels. So if you add up, if we wanted to replace every boiler in this country under current production methods and the skills that we've got, it would take 19 years to replace existing boilers with electric boilers. Yeah. So basically, we're producing all this new equipment, which is creating massive CO2 spikes. Yeah.
Because we've got to bring this to a close, Jules. If we summarise this, then what I'm hearing you saying, again, bringing it back to a farming perspective, there is an obsession with the output of farming. That's what's happening with the cattle and everything else, and we appear to be ignoring the input costs. So we're looking at the output costs. So there's a cow over here on a field giving out methane. We're doing something to the soil. There's an output element. What I think you're saying is that we're not looking in any way, in a formulaic way, at what the inputs are actually doing. So the journey to sustainability, we can't just be focused on the output side. We've also got to be focused on how we're getting there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying, and that's what I do it with every single one of my products. I'm looking at the input cost.
Yeah.
So the very best I can get, for example, we do these shock mitigation seats that are used in the marine industry. And ordinarily, if I just use basic processes and I didn't use certain materials and such like, I'd be producing 200 kilograms of CO2 per seat. Yeah. The best I can get is 58 kilograms. And that's because I've used a very high proportion of recycled material.
Mm-hmm.
I use very low energy processes. So you've got to be working at every level. Funny enough, actually, we had a consultancy come in, it's a government project, funded project, to come in and look at making us more sustainable. Yeah. And by the time we showed them what we did, they said, could you give us presentations and lectures on this?
So, Jules,
because it's only so far that LEDs and electric bits and pieces and solar panels will go. Yeah. So if we are going to be producing all of this stuff, it's going to require vast levels of resource. I'll give you an example. Okay.
Quick one, yeah.
So you want to make a round tube. Yeah. A round tube.
Yeah.
And you start from nothing. Yeah. What you have to do is you cobble something up that gets you fairly close. Yeah. So you need to make this spindle. Okay. So you might carve it by hand. Yeah. With a lot of skill. And when I was an apprentice, I was made to learn how to file a square piece of material round. Yeah. When I could have put it on a lathe. Yeah. But then to make the next, so I've made a spindle to make a lathe to be able to turn a piece of material so I can get more accuracy. Yeah. So I make that second stage spindle more accurate. And then I take that and I put it in a lathe and I can make it more accurate again. Yeah. So you don't, and now we work to the highest levels of precision. Yeah. You go and look at something made in the medieval times, it's doing pretty much the same function. They didn't have the same level of precision.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're looking at wood screws, we're looking at, standardized items, and it is precision. The same is true of any equipment that you are going to be using in sustainability, trying to reduce CO2. Yeah. You have to do it on a progressive basis. Yeah. If we were really hung up about the CO2 output and electrification, we would be going at nuclear left, right, and center. Yeah.
Okay.
So I sense, Dave, there's almost another discussion with Jules here, because I'm interested. I'm not going to talk about it now, Jules, but I think about the politicization, the politics of sustainability as well, and how maybe it's being used as a political weapon at times. We won't get into that now, but I sense there's another conversation about your views on the politicization of sustainability as well, which again, I'm thinking a lot of our farmers would resonate with. Which party do we vote for that's going to have the best story on sustainability? And each political party says they've got the right answer, and the reality probably is none of them have got the right answer because they're not looking at it in the right way,
because they're looking at it using data.
Exactly.
Well, I think the problem is that we are surrounded by profits. Yeah. And I was driving at 5 o'clock in the morning to the ice rink with my eldest daughter. And on the radio came in and said, oh, well, May was the hottest May since 1845 or something. And my 13-year-old fell about laughing and basically said to me, do they genuinely expect us to believe it? We've had the heating on. Yeah, we've had, yeah, I had to wear my coat to school. Yeah, it's been raining. Yeah, and she's 13, so she's only seen 13 springs. And she's now looking at this and going, I'm sorry, why are you telling me this? Because it's patent. It, in my experience, it's not true. And the problem with the whole thing is that with climate change, and I'm not denying climate always changes. It does. Yeah. We mustn't be overstressing our environment. And I've been doing environmental engineering now for as long as I can remember, most certainly in my own business. But what will happen is people will say, well, where's the sea level rise? Where's the melting ice caps? Where is it? Yeah. Because we're dealing with something that takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to change. And we're trying to basically make a change in a very short period of time that is statistically insignificant. Yeah. And what will happen is if it's the boy that cried wolf, and everybody goes, well, I'm not seeing it. The fact is that the earth is greening by 5%.
Wow.
The earth has got in the last number of years, the earth is greener by 5%. And so I'm not an expert on it, but is that because of increased CO2? Is it because the climate is more friendly? Is it because you've got greater resilience with the kind of plants that are growing?
Well, it could be something to do with the fact all the farmers are now listening to this going, it's because the government are making us plant trees, keep the margins of our fields as flowers. But so, Jules, I wish we had time.
The best summary, I think, is what Jules said about his daughter.
Yeah.
You began this podcast, I know we've talked at length about sustainability. You began with the difference between data and information, and that little story you talked about your daughter saying, well, the data says that we've had the hottest May on record. The information is I've had to wear my coat to school. That's a brilliant way.
That's the information.
Yes, exactly. And that's a brilliant way of summarising what we talked about. Dave, over to you.
You can't argue with what's true. Jules, in 30 seconds, if you had Farmer Harris sat in front of you, from what you've shared today, what is the one or two things you would advise Farmer Harris to start thinking about, considering, or even doing as a result of what you just said?
The first thing I would say is don't panic.
Mr. Mannering.
Don't panic. Yeah, people are now starting to question some of these policies and the cost of these policies.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say is you need to go and if you need to go out there and be more environmental than environmentalists.
More environmental than the environmentalists?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
And learn and prove your environmental and push back on the data. Yeah. So, look, if you're really interested, put in a carbon added tax, because all we're doing is we're importing CO2. You can't argue against that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is for campaign to get funding or tax breaks on diversifying the way that you produce. So hot houses, yeah, high margin crops, things that are brought in, by plane. I buy spring onions and they nearly always come from Egypt. They're not coming on a slow truck.
True.
Yeah. And so what you have to do is you have to push back and you have to say, well, actually, we are environmental. Yeah. You need to push for this resilience thing. Yeah. Because they are playing around with the sustainability. The other thing is that
that's three. You can't have three.
He's had four.
No, I'm going to give you another one. You've got a company in London that claims to be net zero.
Yeah.
How? Yet you've got a farm full of plants and grass and trees that sequesters carbon. It sequesters carbon. So you've got this group. That's why we're planting trees, to sequester carbon. So I would love to do a study, even on a dairy farm. Hedgerows absorb carbon. Most of the farms should be net zero. They should be carbon. They should be carbon positive.
Yeah.
So, because of the efforts of the farmers, why can't farmers charge carbon offset? Because cities and businesses don't. They are mass producers of CO2. The countryside is not. It's actually sucking up the CO2. So you should get carbon offset for the stuff that you're. Yeah, no, it's true.
Jules,
but that's no good for the big corporations, is it?
We could listen to you for about 6 weeks, mate. So, first of all, if anyone wants to get hold of you, how can they best do that? LinkedIn or website?
I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, Jules Morgan on LinkedIn, if anyone wants to get hold of Jules. And thank you for your time, your expert contribution, and your energy.
Your passion.
I hope the farmers are applauding you as I say this. And again, thank you. Have you got anything to add, Paul?
No, just that. I think it's so hard in the agricultural sector to feel that we're being put out as the bad guy, if you like, and actually to hear somebody who's not coming at this from a lobbying perspective, purely from a scientific and perspective, saying, I'm sure if they've listened all the way through and they're still with us because it's been a long session, they will be applauding, and just grateful, I think, that somebody is talking reason here rather than just emotion. So thank you, Jules, very much on behalf of the team.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm an engineer. I don't do emotion.
Exactly. Yeah. On that note,
we're all on the autistic scale somewhere along the line, and you see things for what they are.
Yeah.
And you have to always come up with a result that works.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I remember you once saying to me this amazing fact, and I went, "How do you know all this detail?" And I remember distinctly you saying to me, "David, I'm an engineer. If I get things wrong, people die." Jules, thank you very much indeed, my friend. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers,
Bye.
buddy. Right. Now we're going to have a really short piece from James, the body fix coach. Something that'll help your well-being. But remember, it's advisable to speak to your doctor before you start any significant exercise regime. Enjoy. So we're here with James again at the converted cowshed, now gym, in Burton-on-Trent. James is from the Body Fix Coach. You'll see on the wall behind him that lovely phrase he uses, which is movement is medicine. Although if you do a session with James, I promise you movement is quite a lot of pain, followed by feeling much better later on. So James, what are we doing today?
So on today's video, what we're going to be talking about is elbow and wrist pain. So as farmers, you are probably doing a lot of carrying, a lot of picking up throughout the day. So eventually what that might lead to is a lot of pain in the elbows or the wrists. So we're going to go over an exercise. So if we think about flexion and extension. Now flexion, so whenever we're gripping or anything like that, that is when angles of joints decrease. So if we think about when we bend our elbow or we bend our knee, that is flexion. And when we straighten it back out again, that is extension. Okay, so because we're gripping all day long, gripping all these different objects, what we tend to find is that the flexors in the forearms overcompensate, whereas our extensors become weak. So I have these little bands, which I got off Amazon. So if you go onto there and you type in hand X band, you will find them. It's a little device where you can put your thumb and forefingers in. And what they are designed to do is strengthen up the extensors of the forearm.
For those listening to this, I suppose, James, it looks a little bit like a knuckle duster made out of an elastic band.
You could say that, yeah. So I'll give a demonstration and just talk about what I'm doing. So I'm just putting all my thumb and my forefingers into the band. And then what we need to think about doing is just extending the hands out. So with any exercise, what we're doing, we try to aim for high repetitions first. So anything above 10 repetitions, up to 15, maybe 20. As you use these little devices, they come in all different weight resistance as well. So you can always start on the lighter one and move up a little bit at a time once you feel a little bit stronger. So what you may find is when you're extending your hands out, one or two of your fingers may appear a little bit weak. So the little finger and the ring finger is where the power comes from in the hand. So if you're finding those muscles in there a little bit weak, we know the muscles correlating down the forearm are probably the ones we need to work on, and they may be the cause of the elbow pain. So
that surprises me. I'd have thought the thumb and the index finger were the strong ones.
It's the little finger and the ring finger.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, just work on these throughout the day. They are very helpful. Again, hand expands off Amazon. They probably cost around £3 to £4 for a set. And that's that.
And I know that farmers have been saying that they suffer with a little bit of arthritis or rheumatism. Is any advice if they're struggling with that, with this exercise?
In my opinion, a lot of those joint problems, bone problems, start because the joints aren't functioning properly. If we've got a lot of tight muscles in our body, can lead to a lot of pain. The joint's not going through its range of motion properly, and those problems can start further down the line.
Thank you very much, James. Great session. So, welcome to another drill down section. Today, a bit unusual. Do you get caught up in the melee of every day just seeming to be the same routine? Perhaps it's not monotonous because the sheep might get out, or the rain might cause your crop to fail. These little alterations in the daily routine, they happen all the time. But for your own sanity, sense of purpose and worth and value, have you ever considered doing something big? I mean, something different, something that will challenge you, your family, your team. Now, a couple of examples. Just down the road from here in Staffordshire, there was a guy who started with one field. He did a one field experiment. He put up some polytunnels, grew some strawberries, was quite successful, and now from the motorway, as you drive past his farm, it's field upon field upon field. He's grown something huge from starting small. Is there something you could do? And this could be practically on the farm. It could be you as a farm creating reputation and awareness in the community. It could be something for you and local farmers. How about putting on I don't know what the word is, like a party? How about a barn dance? but do something different. What do you say, Paul?
So why would it be good for us to think, let's call it think outside the box? What does it do to us, maybe our mindset and how we think? What's the benefit? Obviously, we can talk in a second about some practical examples of that, and I can think of a few from a farming perspective. But why is it good for us to do this big thinking that you're talking about? What does it do?
Because farmers are industrious in their mindset. They're problem solvers, aren't you? You're problem solvers. Something happens, you fix it, because you can't rely on anyone else. You have to fix it. And so you are solution-focused people. Some of us are more solution-focused than others, but you are solution-focused people. So
why is it, pause there then? So why is it you think, when I'm thinking of us farmers out there, that often we are solution focused, but we can get stuck in the circular element of the daily grind, as you called it at the beginning? How do we get out of that? If you say you're going to do something big, one of you talk about rhino thinking, this idea of really doing something major. How do we make that first step, Dave, into maybe thinking something bigger? What's the first thing you've got to do? Is it a mindset thing? What is it? Where do we start?
It's about doing something that will put a smile on your face. Sometimes it's not even about the money. Sometimes it's about just doing something for the hell of it. Just do something to bring a bit of joy, and by doing that, you'll increase the motivation of the team. But more importantly, not just for fun. If you do something with a reason behind it, do something maybe for a cause, maybe raise some money for a cause or a charity that you deeply care about and are emotionally attached to. Do something for local wildlife, the hedgerows, whatever, do. What's the Monty Python sketch? Remember the buffalo or whatever it is. Do something that makes your heart sing. Now, some of you are going, oh, here we go, fluffy, woolly nonsense again.
Well, I can interject there. I often use a phrase when I'm doing exercises in a training session. I say, this is what I call fun with a serious intent.
Oh, yes.
So you're doing something that you're going to enjoy, maybe a project that you've been putting off. It could just be, as you say, altering some layout of the farm or adding a little building in, or maybe thinking about, let's put a milk vending machine in and just see how that works. It can be, you can start small, but it's got to be fun, because if it isn't going to be enjoyable, you're not going to stick at it. We'll talk about resilience maybe another time, but starting small, but something you're going to enjoy has a serious intent. So, or it could be something, as you say, of let's do open farm Sunday and get everybody onto the farm. That's quite a big commitment, but it's got to be fun. If you're not going to enjoy it, I think is what you're saying, you're likely to run out of steam quite quickly. If you're thinking about big projects, doing a big project that you really are not going to enjoy is going to be quite challenging versus doing something that actually, I mean, maybe a regen, maybe you're interested in the whole regenerative farming exercise, but you're thinking, where do I start? I need every acre I've got on my field, either for crops or for livestock feed. Well, maybe we just start with the field edges. But I do something because I'm interested in it. Is that what you're saying? If you're interested in it, you're more likely to do it. And then from there, from the edges of your field, you might then say, actually, do you know what? That one field over there that is not good for maybe livestock, let's make that a full regen. Let's do some herbal A's. Let's do various things in that field. And suddenly you've got a big project coming on.
It evolves.
Yeah.
It evolves. And if you're doing something with a reason to do it. Now, Paul and I have talked a lot about the well-being of the farmer in these podcasts. And what if you take responsibility for doing something in your farming community, in your county? How about putting on, this might already be a thing. You can probably tell I'm excited by this idea I've just had. Right. There's young farmers for young farmers. They socialise, they do activities. They don't just sit and talk farming. They do lots of different things. How about old farmers? Why doesn't somebody start old farmers where you don't just sit and talk about work and help each other with work? You actually do something. You go on a magical mystery tour on a bus one day. Go to the theatre, the cinema, go and, I don't know, consider the daisies on top of a hill. But go for a walk, go to the cinema, do something. Go and tractor racing.
I think you may have come up with a really interesting idea then, Dave. And certainly watch this space, because I think that's a really interesting concept of how do we support the older generation of farming, often who are still in farming, with some sort of support network. As you say, there is a support network for young farmers. I've been in the industry now over 10 years. I'm not aware. There may well be, if you're out there screaming, saying, yes, there is. It's called Old Farmers Incorporated or something. Fantastic. But if there isn't, that's what we're saying is, what innovation can you bring maybe to your own farm, maybe to the industry? There are countless examples of farmers who've put a couple of solar panels up in a field and suddenly they realise they can make a fair amount of money out of that. They've started the regenerative approach, and they've started to find they quite enjoy it. Or they've put a milk vending machine at the end of their farm drive, and then suddenly they find that actually they're now selling ice cream. Or they've countless they've put a few tents in a field, and now they've got a glamping business. They've had one cottage that they've let out privately, and now they've got an Airbnb holiday business. The key about thinking big is it can start small, but it's that idea of what you're going to do tomorrow that's outside the box thinking, rather than that constant routine that you can get stuck into. And I suspect, Dave, that would, if you do something you're excited about, it's going to have a knock-on effect on what you're less excited about.
Oh, 100%.
Because of the fact that your mindset improves.
Your mindset shifts. You walk around with a smile on your face. And so you go, I remember when I was happy, I was 12. But honestly, don't you deserve to be happy? Don't you deserve to enjoy life just a little bit more? So plan for it, include it. And as Paul said, set something really big, but make sure when you plan it all out, every single task towards that big goal you look at it and go, I can do that. Make sure it's realistic and achievable. Get some buy-in from friends, family, your team, other farms, and just see what you can get done. See what needs doing in the community. What if just one day a year, perhaps you and half a dozen local farmers go and do something in the local town or the community to truly serve the community? Can I humbly suggest that maybe then when you need it, they might be there for you?
Go and walk the Three Peaks Challenge. Go and climb a mountain with a bunch of farmers. There's lots of support networks, the Farm Community Network. There's Farm Safety Foundation. Interesting, we were talking about safety in a previous session. The Yellow Wellies, as I think they're called. There's lots of organisations out there that you can support by doing something fun. But what the knock-on effect of that in your team and on your farm can be creative thinking. You know, maybe when you're walking up the Three Peaks Challenge and you're walking with another farmer who says, yeah, I've just put my first polytunnel up and I'm growing some strawberries. Have you thought of doing that? Who knows? Because often with a lot of groups that we get together, discussion groups, what do we talk about when we get together as farmers? Farming. We talk about the same thing, whereas what we need to do occasionally is have a conversation that's a bit outside the box, that thinking big. The Magic of Thinking Big, one of the first self-development books I ever read. I can't remember the author now. Do you remember?
Wow, I don't remember the book. Yeah,
The Magic of Thinking Big. One of the very sort of early stage personal development books was The Magic of Thinking Big. Look it up on Amazon and you'll find the title there somewhere.
And if anybody thinks personal development books, you haven't got time, do you know what? The most successful people in the world are the biggest consumers of personal development material. Why don't we try it as farming, eh? Why don't we try it? So do something big. Do something different. Why? Because you deserve it. See you again.